For starters, I'm a night owl. I'll stay up all night, then get 7 to 8 hours of sleep during the day. During the past couple of nights, I've been hearing voices, noises, etc. My brother, who's trans, female to male, and my rooms connect with a bathroom, and we both have sliding doors to the bathroom. During the night, I'll hear the door being pressed against, making it shake and bang. We do have cats, but I always make sure they aren't in there before I close the door. Plus, during the night, only my cat is in my room, and he usually stays in there. The other thing I've been hearing is my mother's voice. This has happened multiple times, and sometimes it changes where it's coming from. Sometimes it sounds as if it's coming from the dining room, or it's coming right from the living room, which I have a good view of from my room when the door's open. But when I hear the voice, she's always sleeping, since she works during the day and doesn't stay up late. There are a few times where I heard her voice talking to my siblings, and their voices talking too, and it's even said my name a few times. I don't know what it is, or even is a thing, spirit, etc. I have also seen figures go through the living room towards the dining room. What I did see that scared the life out of me happened a while ago in our old house. I don't know if it could be something that followed us to our new home and or could be related to me hearing my mother's voice. I was in my bedroom and had gotten up to use the bathroom. The hallway was pretty small and the bathroom was right in the centre. My room was off to the right and my mother's to the left. Then, across from the bathroom was the living room. It was a small house before I went into the bathroom. I had seen my mother standing in her room with her back towards me. Before I could close the bathroom door, I looked up to see my mother on the couch, just playing on her phone. Knowing exactly what would happen if I shut that door, after seeing my mother in her room, and after many horror movies, I dashed into the living room. And, of course, I told my mother what I just saw. I don't know if there's a possibility of hearing my mother's voice, along with seeing her in her bedroom when she was really in the living room, might be connected or not. Or if something might have followed us from the old house to our newer home. My family used to live in a house that was right above a small store. To get to our front door, you had to climb quite a few stairs. On the right side was a huge parking lot, a gym, and a couple small shops and restaurants. On the left was a small dirt parking space and a swamp that went out a decent amount, and then some more houses. I had my own room at the time, which was straight down the hallway from the kitchen. It was peaceful in the house for a small amount of time, but one night I had woken up for whatever reason that I can't remember and saw a small boy engulfed in flames just dancing around my bed. He kept telling me to go outside over and over again. Now, the swamp looks like it was sturdy ground by looking at it, but if you put a single foot down, you just fall right in. I don't remember what happened next, but apparently, both my parents had woken up to the door opening. They got up, ran to the door, and saw me going towards the swamp. Luckily, my father was able to run down the staircase and get me before I went any farther. After some time had passed, after my mom had my second little brother, 2 more incidents happened. I was up in the attic with my father, just playing with his wrestling stuff. There was a small doorway that led to the small room where he kept his wrestling collection, and there was the rest of the attic, and a small staircase that led down to the kitchen. I had gotten bored of being up in the attic, so I headed over to the stairs to go play with my own things. Before I could take a single step down the stairs, A pair of hands pushed themselves against my back, causing me to go flying down the stairs. My mom was in the kitchen and thankfully, she was there to quickly help me. She asked if I tripped and I told her no, that someone had pushed me. She did have a team of ghost hunters come to our house to investigate. When they had gone up to the attic, they had brought me along. They asked, "Did you push this girl down those stairs?" And they had gotten a reply, "Yes." Sometime after that, when my second brother was a bit older, this incident happened and it almost destroyed our family. My second brother was sleeping in my first brother's room because my dad was still building the bunk bed for him and I was sleeping on the couch. I wasn't in the room at the time, but my mother did tell me what happened. She had gone into my brother's room to say goodnight to both of them. And when she went in there, she found my brother with a weapon in his hand. I can't remember if it was a knife, a meat mallet, a hammer, etc. She asked my first brother why he had the weapon, and without even hesitating, he said, "They told me I have to kill my brother tonight." And like any parent would, she panicked and got my second brother out of the room. After a few days, she had the same group of ghost hunters come back to investigate. They gave her this container full of some weird liquid and told us to spray it on the carpet in my brother's room and have him sleep somewhere else. The morning after doing that, there were blue footprints leading from the door straight to my brother's bed. She did send him to a place to stay for a while, and it helped prove that it wasn't really my brother that night. Then there was everything that happened in our last home, along with what was going on in our new house. I did forget to add something else that happened. I was sitting on the couch, just scrolling on my phone and laughing at the hilarious argument that was going on between my mom and first brother. At some point, I felt pain go through my left forearm, as if someone had taken the tip of a knife and dragged it up my arm. I look down and see 3 scratches appearing in the spot that hurt the most. It was faded enough where you couldn't see it at first glance, but it was still somewhat visible. In Thailand, many people believe in the supernatural, including my grandma, and to show for it, she had a shrine dedicated to the Kuman Thong, a luck-bringing deity, in the general living space of the house. She lives in a multi-storey townhouse, so the general living space consisted of both the living room and dining room. There were no walls separating them. Now, the Kuman Thong are said to bring prosperity and protection to the homeowner, meaning they are not a malignant force to residents. However, the things I saw and heard that night still stick with me. I must reiterate, it may have just been a nightmare. I'm staying at my grandma's with my sister on Saturday night, as we used to do when we were very young. I was sleeping on the 3rd floor of the townhouse and woke up because I needed the toilet. The toilet was down on the 2nd floor, where my sister and grandma were sleeping, and so I felt relatively safe to make the journey in the dark, plus my flashlight. I had one of those kinetic flashlights, specifically for a visit to the toilet in the night. I reach the 2nd floor, and the first thing I notice is a dim light coming from the ground floor. First reaction, someone had left the lights on downstairs, and so I dismissed it rather quickly, until I heard laughing. Children's laughter. It was the faintest noise, though, and only in silence could you make it out. My next move was trying to catch a glimpse of anything or anyone down there. You could see part of the living room from the top of the stairs that led to the 2nd floor. Didn't see anything other than the lights which had been dimmed. Only other thing that happened that night was me hearing the noise of one of those pull-back toy cars, which would then propel itself going forward. I had one of them, which was a Hot Wheels speed racer, and I have heard that spring sound so many times that I know it was the same noise I heard from downstairs. That set me slowly walking back to my bed, as to not disturb what I believe were the spirits of the Kumanthong downstairs, and my need to pee was no longer there. This is the only time I've encountered a spirit, and I like to think that they aren't real, but my friend described his own experience, which was almost identical to this. Downstairs later on during the dead of night, noises of children laughing and the noises of children's toys being played with. What's even scarier is that his mom has told us that when he was a kid, he used to talk and play with things no one else could see. And his mom believes that those things were the spirits of the Kumanthong. I've been having paranormal encounters for most of my life. Be it actually seeing ghosts, feeling their presences, or literally hearing them in my head. I know it sounds crazy, but it's completely true. My great-grandmother was the same way from what everyone tells me, and those who knew her say I'm practically her clone. Either way, for the past year, I've been seeing this thing in my dreams. No, it's not sleep paralysis. Whenever I see it, I'm fully aware of the fact that I'm dreaming, but I can't wake up. The dreams usually put me out in the woods, somewhere dark, and I'm in the middle of this clearing with a lake in it. About 30 feet away in the tree line is this absolutely massive shadow figure, and I'm talking like 40 or 50 feet tall. The trees are taller, but this thing almost reaches the top of them. I call it a man, but it has no real shape to it. You guys ever see those Fresno Nightcrawler things? It's shaped kind of like that. Only completely black with these massive deer antlers sticking out of its head and these distributing red eyes. When I say red, I mean like pure neon red. They don't glow very bright, but bright enough to make him noticeable. He never gets any closer to me, but I can always feel his presence when I'm in those woods. Recently, however, I've started feeling that presence outside of my dreams, and it started to freak me out really bad. Along with that, I've started seeing an entity that looks like a little girl. I want to say 6 or 7, that has no features except for these big eyes. I only see her in the corners of my eyes at night. But the other features I've gotten are a thick black braid going down her back, a strange white dress. I want to put it around the late 1800s or early 1900s, and what look like bruises. I have no idea if these things are connected, but it's freaking me out. If anyone has any thoughts about red eyes or the girl, I'd really like to hear them. Thanks. My sister lives in my parents' house, where they both died due to COVID-19. Over the past few months, my sister has mentioned bizarre things happening in the house. I don't live there right now. It started 3 months ago, about 5 months after our parents had passed away due to COVID-19. She said she was sleeping and heard something in the room across from the bedroom and looked and saw what looked to be a silhouette of a woman peering around the corner, and she called me immediately. She turned on the lights, nothing was there, and I went and stayed with her, and nothing was there. A few weeks later, when I was there helping move our parents' stuff out to a storage unit, about 8 o'clock at night, we heard what vividly sounds like running in the attic. There's absolutely no way to get in the attic besides from my parents' old bedroom. Naturally, we think someone is up there, so we call the police and they do a thorough search. And there's nothing. And we got lectured about false police reports. 1 month ago, I'm staying there, the dog sitting while my sister is vacationing, and she had been complaining that she kept seeing the same silhouette in the most ominous places. I told her that her mind was playing tricks on her. I'm laying on the couch, and behold, I heard running in the attic yet again. I'm kind of freaking out at this point because I don't want to call the police due to the last time. Instead, I call our neighbour over, and once again, nothing is up there. Last night, I get a call at 3 a.m. and my sister's out of breath in her car, driving over, screaming at me that she heard Dad's voice in the attic. I mean, she is frantic. She gets to my house and unironically looks like she saw a ghost. My grandma's house has always been a scary place, for as long as I can remember. My dad and aunt and uncle all grew up in the house and had paranormal experiences occur throughout their lives. One example was when my dad and uncle were teenagers. My uncle was walking down the steps and was swinging a towel as he had just washed his hair. Out of nowhere, my dad, who was standing in the living room at the bottom of the stairs, saw the towel straighten out in front of my uncle, as if someone pulled it, and my uncle fell forcibly down the stairs. Now, my grandma hates all things paranormal, especially Ouija boards, and she would often visit gypsies. So it's a big no-no in our family to discuss the paranormal events that occur in her house. 20 years or so ago, my cousins and brothers were playing in the upstairs bedrooms of my grandparents' house. The toys were set up in the room across the hall from them, and they were all in the same bedroom playing a board game. Out of nowhere, a Hot Wheels car, no batteries, no wind-up, just an average car, slowly exited the room that the toys were in, went across the hall and into the room where they were all sitting. Needless to say, they were all terrified. Around 8 years ago, my oldest brother moved into the basement of their house. One night, when he was home alone, he woke up out of a deep sleep, having felt like he was shaken by someone. He stood up and instantly smelt gas. He went upstairs and outside of the house. Later, he found out there was a carbon monoxide leak, and if he had not woken up, there's a big chance he could have died in his sleep. Months after they went, my grandparents were away for the weekend. The family decided to try the Ghost Radar app in their house. We all sat around the phone and my uncle asked the normal questions. Is anyone here? Blah, blah. Then he asked, who used to live in the basement? At this point, my brother had moved out. The Ghost Radar replied with my brother's full first name, which no one ever calls him. We were shocked. So my uncle asked, how did you save my brother? It replied with, Wake. What the fuck? He then asked, what did you save him from? And it said, gas. Bruh. Needless to say, we were shocked. The last thing that I'm going to talk about that happened in the house is my grandparents' friend's obituary, who passed away probably 15 years ago, will show up in their kitchen every month or so. They usually say hello to their friend and put the obituary back in the basement where it's supposed to stay. A little while later, it will show back up in the kitchen. My dad grew up next door to the house I live in now. His parents were friends with the original owners of my house, and my dad knew them basically as his aunt and uncle. My parents bought his aunt and uncle's house when I was like 6 months old. My dad would often go to the house by himself to work on it, because it needed quite a bit of updating. The owners were old and didn't have great taste, lol. Whenever my dad would change something in the house, pull up the carpets, paint the walls, redo the bathroom, etc., he would smell the old owner's cologne. The old owner had passed away in his new home in Florida. Because of this, We assumed that owner chose to reside in his old home, aka our home. Growing up in that house, we always experienced paranormal events. Our cousins and friends would stay over, and even they would experience something. A quick rundown of the thing's experiences. One time, when my family was out of town, my cousin came to our house to let our dogs outside. She came in through our garage, and the door to the house from the garage opened right to the basement stairs. Scary, I know. When my cousin walked into the house, she saw a figure standing at the bottom of the stairs. She sat there. They looked at each other for a couple of seconds before she realized what she saw and ran out of the house. Our living room has a walkway into the kitchen, and to the right of that walkway is the stairs to the top floor. You can see up the stairs from the living room. At least 3 to 4 times a week, I see a figure walk down the stairs and into the kitchen. And it's been that way for as long as I can remember. Everyone in my family has seen it, and it's just a normal occurrence now. My brother will be like, "Yo, did you see him just walk down the stairs?" And I'm like, "Yep." One time in particular, my brother and I were in the living room when we saw the figure go down the stairs. Neither of us acknowledged it. But we then heard a full cup of water that my brother had been drinking earlier slide across our textured countertops. When we looked in the kitchen, the cup was 90% of the way off the counter. There's no possible way it could have done that without falling. I still to this day do not know how that happened. But we ran out, our little asses, out of that house and to our older brother's house down the road. Now that I'm older, I'm more interested in figuring out who the ghosts are. I bought a pendulum from New Orleans a couple years back and used it in my old room. I got a couple of answers. The spirit said it didn't like me. That hasn't changed, lol. The next day, as I was getting ready for school, I saw a figure run from behind me out of my room. It was small, like child-sized. Now, I don't trust small ghosts, so I moved the fuck out of that room into my now grown brother's old room. His room was pretty haunted, but I didn't care. When his girlfriend would stay in that room, my brother slept in the living room. She would wake up in the middle of the night to the closet doors sliding open. My brother and I both experienced seeing a man standing in the corner of the room in the middle of the night. I'd just turn my TV on and go back to sleep. I used my pendulum in that room to try and figure out who the spirits were. It went like this. Do you like me? No. Do you want to hurt me? No. Was this your house? Yes. Do you get angry when we change things here? Yes. Are you the man that stands in my room while I sleep? No. When I talk about the spirits at my house, they become more active. I've learnt that if I ask them nicely to be calm, they won't mess with me. I often do this if I have an important test the next day and need sleep. So, I consider them my pals, lol. I'm moving soon, so I don't know if they'll stay at my house or come with. My mom seems to think that they'll follow me. In 2014, my brother sadly lost his battle with depression. It was very difficult for our whole family. There was a lot of anger towards one girl because she did something pretty horrible that ended up basically pushing him to do it. Also, my mom was a Christian and was very worried about where my brother would end up because she was always taught in school that if you committed suicide, you didn't go to heaven. My mom would also love butterflies a lot. Since she was a kid, she believed that people who pass away come back in the form of butterflies when they want to visit you. My dad believed in the paranormal, but still always will try to deny experiences when he encounters them. I have 2 more brothers, one of which was in high school, who we'll call T, and another who was older. Here's some of my experiences. About a week ago, after my brother passed away, we began having problems with our lights and electrics in the house. Kind of cliche, I know. Of course, my dad chalked it up to be our electrical box, yada yada. But I, along with my immediate family, would always see this as a sign from my brother that he was with us. We would usually go, "Hi, brother, we miss you. We know you're there," and the flickering would subside. This will come up again later. After about 2 weeks, my mother and father's anger towards that girl had grown extensively. However, she had a child with my brother. One night, my mom had a very vivid dream, and her explanation of it was as follows. My mom, dad, and brother sat at our dining room table. She said it was so real that she could hear him breathing. My brother proceeded to tell my parents to forgive the girl, that it wasn't her fault, and that they need to see the baby still. After this, my parents did what he said and mostly forgave her. About 3 months after he passed away, my family, mom, dad, brother, grandparents, were sitting in my grandparents' driveway. As we all talked, a butterfly, I believe it was yellow, but I'm not positive on that fact, flew around us and landed on my grandma's finger. She laughed and waited for it to fly away, but it didn't. It stayed there. For a couple of minutes, we continued talking as it sat with my grandma. Then she asked, "Can I pet you?" And it did a little flick of the wings, which my grandma took as a yes. She gently touched the body of the butterfly. A couple of minutes after, she stopped petting it. It flew around us and flew away. Whether it was my brother or just a lonely butterfly, that was a very crazy experience. One afternoon, my dad and T cleaned out our garage. I think my dad used cleaning as a way to think and escape. We have long metal shelves in our garage that are used for storage. They completely took everything off of them, wiped them down, and organized the items that they put back. The next morning, it was maybe 6 a.m., my mom and dad stood in the garage smoking a cigarette. Yes, sadly they still do. Before my mom left for work. My mom looked at one of the shelves as she was telling my dad how nice the garage looked. And there was a small yellow metal butterfly hair clip. Kind of like what you'd see in a little girl's hair. Now my mom knew instantly that there was no way it could be mine because 1, she only bought plastic clips for my hair, and 2, I stopped using the clips probably 3 or 4 years prior, as I was a little tomboy. She took this as a sign from my brother and clipped it on his rosary that she kept in her car. Later that day at work, my mom was stopped by someone in the hallway. It was a nurse that is called in to do a specific thing at the facility, only when it needs to be done, meaning she's there maybe once a month. She didn't know my mom, she didn't know my brother. The lady stopped and asked my mom, "Did you recently use your son?" My mom said yes, and the lady said, "He was really tall, wasn't he?" My brother was 6'2" or 6'3". My mom said he was pretty tall. The lady said, "He has tattoos, some on his face too." My mom said yes. Then the lady proceeded to say, "He says he left you a gift this morning, something to do with a butterfly because he knows you like them. He also wants me to tell you that the things that you keep noticing and asking if it's him, it is. He's telling you he's there with you, and he knows you're worried, but he's in a good place. He's okay." My mom obviously burst into tears, but the lady had to leave to tend to her patient. My mom never got her name. She's never been able to find her since. But this gave us a lot of hope. A couple of years ago, I was playing a Ouija board with my friends, and when we asked who the person was that we were talking to, it spelled out my brother's name. Obviously, everyone looked at me instantly, but I didn't let myself get excited. I asked what his oldest son name was, and it spelled out the first 4 letters of his name and stopped. Then I asked what my mom's name was, and it spelled it wrong, which I recently heard was something that happens if a spirit is pretending to be someone else. It will know things, but not fully. Something like that. But all of my friends playing would have known both answers. So if any of them were pushing it, the answers would have been correct. But we all swore on our lives we weren't moving it. Something crazy that my sister-in-law experienced about a month after my brother died. My brother T became very close with a girl after my brother passed away. They started dating after a week or so. She would experience the closet doors opening, which we all saw as my brother messing with her because he lived to do stuff like that when he was alive. Also one time, she was looking for her keys all over the house because she had to drive home. She figured it was T hiding the keys, so she had to stay a little longer. But he swears he didn't touch them. He was helping her look. I went to the freezer, probably for food, I'm a fat ass, and found her keys sitting in the freezer on a shelf. We were all super confused and still are. But the craziest thing that happened to her was a month after my brother died. My parents were looking all over for his social security card or wallet or driver's license. That part I'm not sure about, as they don't tell me back then because I was only 11. My parents couldn't find them anywhere and they were getting frantic. T and his girlfriend went to my brother who passed away's old room to look for a movie to watch. He freaking loved movies and owned tons. His door opened into the laundry room. T stepped into the laundry room to put his clothes in the dryer and left his girlfriend in the room. To this day, they both swear up and down on their lives that this happened. The door to his room shut with the girlfriend inside. She thought it was T messing with her, so she tried to open the door and it wouldn't budge. She yelled at T to stop being a dick and to let go of the door. He said he wasn't doing anything. He began to try to push the door open and couldn't. She says that something in her head told her to open one of the drawers. She opened it, and inside were the items that my parents had been looking for. She told him she found it, and to let her leave, and the door opened up. She's still scared to talk about this. Lastly, my boyfriend and I have been together for a year now. And since we started dating, I've always wondered if my brother would have liked him, because my brother has always been very protective over me, and always joked about how he would greet my boyfriend first when he picked me up for a date, blah blah. My boyfriend started wondering this also. About 2 months into our relationship, I took him to my brother's stone. He was cremated, but there is a stone for his memorial at a garden in my city. I introduced him to my brother, and he was very sweet about it. A couple of months later, my boyfriend had a dream with my brother vividly in it, telling him that he likes him. Crazy. Small things still happen from time to time. My brother will visit me in a dream. The lights will flicker rapidly, and once we acknowledge him, they stop. The most common thing that happened starting the week that he died was my entire family seeing the time 12:34 non-stop. I'll wake up and look at the clock and it will be that time. My parents, cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, everyone has experienced it and still does to this day. I even got a tattoo of it on my arm. I miss my brother a lot, but I always feels like he's here with me, watching me grow up, like he always said he would. I'm a member of an up-and-coming paranormal investigation team. We spend every other weekend investigating supposedly haunted locations for our YouTube channel. Our last investigation got a little bit dicey. We had selected an old tuberculosis hospital to spend the night in so we could run tests. Spirits box, Ouija board, Ovulus, the works. Walking into the hospital, you could feel the weight in the air. It was like walking into a vat of syrup. Despite this, things were fairly normal for the first little while. We didn't get much of anything, and we were almost ready to pack it up and go home. Then, one of our investigators, who we had known would be there a little later, arrived. We'll call him Brian. The moment he stepped in the door, things got crazy. The first thing that we noticed was the sound of footsteps running in the hallway above us. It was a 3-story building. No big deal, it could have been an animal. Then, a piece of glass fell from an exit sign above Brian's head. Came a few inches from cutting his head off. We finally decided to conduct one last dowsing rod session and get out of there. During this session, however, Brian's luck began to turn. We didn't stop the session, but rather sent one of our other investigators over to check on him and see what was happening. Upon pulling up his shirt, we found a massive scratch running the length of his back. At that same moment, one of our dowsing rods bent. I'm not talking a small bend that bounced back either. It was a permanent bend in the metal that had definitely not been there before. We were all standing there as well, and the investigators holding the rods could not have bent them without us noticing. In fact, the investigator holding the rods and the one with the scratch both refused to ever investigate with our team again. They stopped investigating permanently. However, I've never seen a ghost do something that malicious. Could this even be a demon? For those who would like to see the video evidence, I'll link the video in the comments. I saw a ghost of a young boy today while visiting my mum's plaque at the cemetery that's near where I live in Adelaide. I'm from Australia if you can't tell. Has anyone ever had an experience like that before? I'm still shaken up because I don't mind if I ever see a ghost, but the cemetery was nearly closing and my car was the only one around and nobody else was about. I tried to go after the boy to see if he was really what I was seeing. He looked about 9 or 10, browny blonde hair, and he looked like he was zooming fast, although he was walking, if that makes sense. But like just for fun, and not even to the gates to get out of the cemetery. And I didn't even see where he came from. I asked him, "Are you okay? Where are your parents?" Thinking it's probably someone's kid needing to be let out of the cemetery. But in reality, now that I think about it, because I looked to see where he was, and literally gone, like out of thin air. He was basically a ghost. He basically popped up and then disappeared out of thin air. Anyone ever had any experience like that? I told my older sister, and she said they might pop into my dreams tonight, and it might mean something.